Welcome back to another Supercoach video. My name is Jackson, or JD, and welcome to the round 5 review where I have had my first down year for the year and it feels bad. Dropped back from just outside the top 100 to just inside the top 500, which is definitely a bit of a downer, but I mean, the way I think about it is all of what 2020 was 17 rounds. We've got 17 more rounds, so look, there's still tons of time to catch up. So I think I'm probably, out of the running for like a real, top 10 finish, just with where I'm at now. But look, definitely can get into double digits, and that'll be the aim. So, leagues. Don't want to be there. So, here's a team. Let's go line by line. Look, obviously, Ridley's injury, that really hurt. But a lot of people in the same boat. For non-owners, I mean, they caught a lucky break because he was not going to be affordable for them. They were going to have to probably do 2 trades, and yeah, they've caught a big break on that one. It's just how Supercoach goes sometimes, but it is what it is. It's actually really interesting. So this is how the team was set up. This is the first week where defenders haven't been a strong line. I mean, only 1 ton, and that was Lloyd who limped in, and everyone else was pretty poor, by previous round standards. So I did end up trading Bowers in. This is going to be a painful one, I think. The kickouts just weren't there for him. Lukosius kind of went back. I mean, maybe with Ballard coming back, I think it is, that pushes Lukosius out. Bose goes back to that seagulling role, but this could be like a real fake primo pick, which is going to hurt. I guess part of the reason to pick him is it's a really good buy. So look, he's someone that you'll just hold to buys anyway and then flick at the end, but yeah, it wasn't great. Lloyd was good, but with Dawson taking kickouts, his ceiling feels kind of limited at the moment. Laird was good. I think he had quite a poor dream team to Supercoach ratio, so it's one of those games we could have gone 120, but got a 95 instead. Short suffered because the Saints just didn't put up a defense at all. Ball was just in the opposition forward 50, which means not too many cheap kicks for Short. Unfortunately, definitely limited his game. Chapman was okay, he started much stronger and faded out, and Cozzy came back, which was not really that much of a surprise given the suspensions, but played a pretty good game too. So I'm hoping he actually holds his spot on the back of that, but we'll see what happens. I'm definitely not super comfortable with fielding at the moment, but honestly, unless you're trading out Highmore, I just don't know how, if you're going to hold on to Ridley. So, yeah, crazy. Other defenders worth noting, so Stewart and Ryan both finally had big games, kind of rewarded their owners, the ones you're looking for, which is great. They both looked good doing it as well. CJ had a bad game, which is kind of what I wrote up after film review during the week. It was, just when you're that uncontested and you rely so much on opposition making mistakes, it limits your ceiling, because you're going to have some games where the opposition just doesn't give you the free touches, where they just don't kick it to you, and that's definitely what we saw. Was anyone else in defense worth talking about? Oh, Houston's the one that I missed. A really poor break for owners. I mean, he actually looked like in the new role he was still going to score well. He was tracking really well, and then copped an injury. It's a shoulder. He still needs to go for scans. I haven't said how long it is, but unless he's back this week, most shoulders are usually at least 3 to 4, at least, if not longer. So that's quite a concern. He might be a must trade this week. In the mids, McRae's a gun, Oliver's a gun. Merritt finally had, one of his better games this week, which was great to see. And kind of surprising he did it in the wet, given that his downfall his first couple of rounds have been disposal efficiency. That's great. Josh Kelly. Wow. I mean, what a player. 26 disposals. That was second most for GWS. I think Tranter led with 27. He had the goal assist and then the winning goal to win the match. Amazing midfielder, right? I mean, that's the real story coming out of this round. But what do you think, Stephen A. Smith?
The story that I walked away focused on, Max Kellerman, is that Leon Kent is somebody that needs to lose his job. He's got to go.
Well, I mean, I can't disagree with you there. I do think Leon Gaffer needs to go. If this is your best player, the best midfielder, and you're still playing him on a half-forward flank. And the worst part is he's now kicked 5 goals in 3 games while still averaging mid-20s kind of disposal numbers. He probably thinks he's a genius for doing this. Like, it's like taking danger and playing him full forward, Mr. Scott. Because yes, he is a good full forward. And yes, you can get a return on that. But you could get even more by just putting him in the centre. I just don't understand how these coaches don't get it. Far out. That's just nuts. Clark, speaking of Scott, Clark was a really disappointing one. But, I mean, this is just super unlucky. And this is the really unfortunate part about Supercoach. Had I known Clark was going to be out, we weren't doing these rolling one-day lockouts and the silly sub stuff. Jelly would have gone to someone else. He actually would have probably turned into Steele, which wouldn't have been great this week, but will be going forward. But instead, I'm left with Clark on the bench copying a 0, and just not great. Goulden's in an interesting spot after back-to-back mid-60s. His break-even's only about, I think it's like high 50s or low 60s, which means he might not have much cash to make unless he spikes a big score. With that said, Swans are playing Gold Coast this week that haven't been in particularly great form, so there's a good chance that all the rookies from the Swans that scored pretty poorly this week could actually have a pretty big game next week. So that applies to Goulden, Campbell, and Warner. Power's great again. He's making big money, and I'm sure he's still got a super low break even, so that's a hold. Campbell, wow, this is so disappointing. Originally one I was looking at trading and decided against it, decided that the skill was there over Jordan, who I traded. And he looked like a complete dud, and Jordan was back to his great, 70 kicks out of his cash regen, so that really hurts. And similarly, I was going to trade out Brockman over Scott. I got kind of convinced that maybe Scott was the better move to do, and I just fell on the wrong side of that trade. So, rookie ruler strikes again. And Berry's the one that's worth looking at trading out this week as well. I think his break-even's mid-40s. So unless we're getting a good score out of him soon, he hasn't got much more cash to make either. So they play Hawks this week, which, I mean, it should be an okay matchup, right? Like that's potentially a win. But Crows have had lots of games that are closer wins, and he hasn't scored particularly well. Gorn and Grundy, I mean, amazing. If you were a 2 rookie ruck starter, your season's really, really off track now because both, 140 and 120 average off these two, and they're going to take you 2 trades to get in, so this really hurts. And then with Flynn, of course, being out for a couple of games, it just makes it so much worse. Other mids worth talking about, back off Rucks. So Walsh had a great game, Bont had a great game, Brayshaw had a good game, so back at 120, he looked really good now that he wasn't being tagged again. And then probably the one that a lot of people are talking about is Neil. So had a huge game, but just remember, Essendon wasn't particularly good on that day. The wet conditions did not do this whatsoever. And Neil was matched up against third gamer Archie Perkins for pretty much all of the 9. So this is someone that has looked good, but yes, super young, and it wasn't a tagging role, it was a run with role. So Perkins was still getting a lot of his own ball as well, but Neil didn't really appear to have to try very hard to get free or get loose. It definitely seemed like Essendon was happy to concede the matchup and just have Perkins learn off him. So I'm not totally sold on Neil yet. He's a great price. I think he's high 500s, 570-ish, with a very achievable break even in the 80s this week. But they come up against Carlton. Cano is a great tagger, or Canal. I think it's Cano. Is a great tagger for them. So, I think Ed should go to Neil, just given how susceptible he's been. But I think the other thing that's on Neil's side is we saw some reports this week that he'd done his first full training. So that's really promising that maybe he's actually getting back towards his best. I think the long and short of it is if you can wait this week and see how Neil goes, see if they send a tagger to him and whether he can manage that, then, if he can get through that, that's a really great sign. If he can't, maybe we can wait a little bit longer, or he's just not a top 8. Finally, the forwards. So Dunkley is just amazing again. Been saying it. He's the F1. Just get on him. But with that said, Siebel had another crazy game where just big old seagull up the back. I can't believe he's averaging 120 and cost us 270. So he's already made over 200k. It's just wild. Impey was good. He looks like a keeper. A little bit of low score, and maybe he wasn't getting all the points he deserved to get, but he's averaging 100, which is great. Warner had a down game, but yes, hoping he bounces back against Gold Coast. And then probably the biggest disappointment from the round for me personally, I mean, like, sometimes unlucky stuff happens, right? Like, can't predict the Clark thing, you can't predict the Ridley thing, whatever. But they're not getting Rowe on the field for Waterman. It's just so frustrating. I was cooking dinner, kids, getting ready for bed, and wasn't looking at the TV. Looked up, saw it was bucketing rain, ran to my computer to swap Waterman and Rowe, and I missed the lockout by, I don't know, must have been seconds. Ball hadn't bounced on TV, but I couldn't get the swap through. So, like, stuff like that just really irks up the wall because, like, yeah, you get unlucky on these things, but when you miss, like, 52 points by seconds, just because you weren't looking at the weather, like, that hurts. Really hurts. Okay, so, you're like, yeah. Oh, man. The other forward that's probably worth talking or touching on really quickly is Danger, who had his return this week. For those that held him, which I think was few, most kind of just jumped off, you were probably expecting a really big score against North, and I was too, but he looked super rusty, which is kind of surprising given he got to play that VFL practice match. He butchered the ball a fair bit, and then he picked up an injury late in the fourth. I guess the only thing that did go my way this week is they didn't trade Clark off, so they didn't sub him off for Clark, so I didn't lose extra money on Clark too, which just would have been an absolute killer. But yeah, so Danger, I think, is someone that we are going to want in our final starting six forwards, but he's posted 2 pretty poor scores now. He's going to lose some cash, so you can wait on that. And Dusty as well, actually. He had a mid-90s score, which was okay, but, like, I mean, this feels like, classic early season Dusty that we've hit now, where he's cruising along, he's doing well, but he's not at his best. He doesn't seem to be trying particularly hard. I know that's partly just because he makes things look effortless, but there is really a big difference between Dusty just like regular season and then when he's on, when it gets to the pointy end of the year. So from memory, their fixture isn't particularly great in the next few weeks anyway. I think he's someone that you can wait on. All right, so advice on what to do with players. So Ridley, I think, is a hold. I can't imagine there's any good situation where you trade him. Yes, he's going to lose more money. He'll probably get down to 500k, for example, and we miss him this week. But just trading him out and in for that is not worth it. Even if you're number 1 overall, it's definitely not worth it. You should just be holding him and playing around him. Most people are going to have to do the same anyway. Houston, as I said, I think it's probably going to be 3 to 4 or longer. Just guessing that it's a shoulder injury. I mean, unless he's back this week, that'll be my guess. If it is something like a month plus, I would look to trade him. Just because with Houston, Highmore, and Cozzy, which is 3 that most people have, like, you just can't hold all 3 of them like that. I just don't think it can be done. So yeah, I would be getting rid of him. And then Clark's the other one that people are going to be interested in. So when's Geelong's game this week? It's on the Saturday. So we actually find out before the first game whether or not he's in or out this week. So if he's out, I think it's fine to trade him. If he's in, I would continue to play him. It's just really frustrating that he missed that game. To be honest, I'm not sure why he would come in. There were some cats that didn't have a particularly great game, especially against a poor side. But, I mean, even if Clark's coming in and he's playing that same poor role, doesn't excite you, does it? So yeah, who knows? But I mean, yeah. Okay. So they've got to go. Who do we want to trade in? That's probably a better question. So in terms of like defenders, I think Short's still like at a cheap price if you don't have Short. He's had a couple of like downish games, but still averaging 100 for the year. So don't mind him as an option. Yes, Stewart, showed something. So if you haven't got him and you're interested in him and it works with your buys, I'd go him. Mills is the other one who had a little bit of a down game as well, but is playing that midfield time, and that seems to be okay. It looked like after the first few rounds that our defenders were going to be averaging 110 plus, and so full-time mid-rolls might not have been attractive. That doesn't seem to be as much the case anymore. I guess the only problem with Mills is he had that really big round 1 game and then hasn't done much after that, and he's still probably on the higher price range. But yeah, defenders don't look great. I think the big thing for defence this week is that everyone needs to be getting in Lachie Jones. He's the only real viable rookie this week. He's defender only. So that's the person you're really trying to look to fit into this, probably rather than another primo. So, even if you're a Houston owner, I think a lot of the best targets this week are in the midfield. So maybe look to downgrade him to Lucky Jones. In the mids, so targets, look, Steele would normally be right at their number one target, but with a lower score, his price isn't, going any higher. In fact, it may come back down over the next couple of weeks. They do have a tough matchup this week with Port, who seem to be pretty good at restricting opposition midfield scores, probably just because they're undefeated. But so someone like Steele does seem like maybe he could wait. People that are cheap this week, Neil, we've already touched on. I think that's a wait and see. Brayshaw is another great option. So I can bring up Bray. So he's 482,700. Kind of as we mentioned last week, he's looked really good this year. It's just that he had those 2 tags. He didn't get taken on the weekend, and sure enough, scored really well again. So I think you could definitely go worse than him if you're looking for a cheap upgrade. The best part is Fremantle have North this week, which should mean another big score. The only downside is North have dabbled or tried to dabble with the tagger. I think Luke McDonald may actually want to be what Noble wants to do. But given he's out, they tried Kane Turner. That was pretty embarrassing. I'm not sure if they try something different for Brayshaw, just given how susceptible he's been. But yeah, I don't mind Brayshaw as an option at all. The other one, which we briefly mentioned, was Walsh, who put up another big score on the weekend. He's 570k now and looks great. I think he had one down game last week, which was at 89, and then pretty much everything else across the board has been 100 plus with a couple, with big score in on the weekend. So yeah, great option, really durable, great runner, which definitely benefits these rules. And when Carlton rely on him really heavily. The Brisbane Lions matchup may not be great, especially given that they seem to be playing a little bit better now. They might be finding a little bit of form. But yeah, those are the ones I'd be looking at. Next week, I guess I'd also maybe consider Tom Mitchell. So Tom Mitchell had another poor game on the weekend. Got lots of the pill, just didn't translate that. He's now at 550 and he's going to go cheaper than that again, which is insane. He's got a break even about 140, which I kind of don't see him hitting. Adelaide's a pretty good matchup, so maybe he gets a pretty good score. But yeah, I think you can wait and see on Titch, because he's having troubles turning these high possession games into Supercoach scores. That hasn't been a problem in the past, but it really seems to be this year. So yeah, you can wait and see on Tom Mitchell next week, Neil next week. You could even wait a week on Brayshaw if you really want to, but yeah, Brayshaw is a good target. And I guess the other one would be Clayton Oliver. So if you don't have Clary at sub 600k, you're getting a real steal there. So I would be jumping on him this week. And then forwards, yeah, I touched on them briefly. But Danger and Dusty aren't ready. I think Dunkley, Zeeble, and Impey are all keepers. And then who your F6 is, I'm not really sure. I don't think it's Tex. Look, with the calf injury, he might even be someone we trade out this week. So let's play around with some trades. Let's see what happens. So as I said, Jones is the one you need to get in. So for me, I think that means, unless I'm trading out Highmore, which I probably won't be. I mean, I think it was McKenzie that looked awful. Was it Webster that got injured as well? Like, surely they've got to open up a spot for Highmore, right? Surely. So I think I want to keep him because he played good. He's going to keep that cash regen. So I want both of them. So it means I think I've got to move Laird into the midfield. And this is where something like, trading Clark out could come into play. So I could do something like trade Clark out. Move Laird into defense. We get Jones. There we go. And then with this 183, I could even do something like trade Tex this week if I really wanted to. Now, the only problem with doing that is I have to do something like put Campbell into my forward line, and like Campbell and Rowe at F5 and 6 seems pretty sketchy. But I've got, tons of money now. I could look at Steele, Walsh, Bond. I don't think I want, especially with the buys. At least not yet. Like after buys, maybe. Titches are next week. Otherwise, like Brayshaw's another big one. But I mean, that's a huge glob of cash left over, which is, pretty interesting because that 200k next week on someone like Goulden, if he doesn't go particularly well, or, all of a sudden you're looking at getting up to Neil or Titch. It's probably going to be not enough to get to someone like a Steal though? Oh, maybe. Maybe. Oh, maybe this is a good trade this week. Okay, I have to think about that. The other option, and like one to consider as well, is the only rookie it looks like we're going to get next week is Finn McRae, who's a mid forward. So, just consider that as you go through these options. So if I don't want to trade Tex, let's get rid of Brayshaw and Tex. So I, maybe Clark plays and just do something like this. Oh. Gonna be one of those weeks. I can't do it. Let's just reset. So maybe I just want to play quite conservative this week. Or is that right now? But why aren't you inside? Something like this, where I trade out someone like Berry, who seems to be plateauing a bit, for someone like Jones. I bank 100k, and that's all pretty boring. But next week it does mean someone like, Tex Walker up's okay, Clark up's okay. I could do a couple of things here. For me, what it's going to come down to, actually, when does so anyway, that Lockie Jones in is the must, and then the rest of it's going to be based on your team needs. If you've got Houston, you're probably trading him. If you've got Tex, you might be trading him, depending on what comes out this week. I mean, they play the Sunday game, so it's Saturday night that we find out. Is that a problem? It's a little bit of a problem, right? Because Neil and Walsh have already played by then. But I guess it isn't if you want to go for Brayshaw. All right, I'm going to stop pondering out loud now because this isn't useful to anyone but me. But yeah, let me know how you went this week. Hopefully a little bit better than mine. Hopefully you are climbing the ranks. Hit me up below if you've got any questions about trades, players, or anything else, and I will see you in the next one.